Hello and welcome back to a new episode of Everything Phil Collins. Today we're going to talk about this album by Chester Thompson called Wake Up Call. And we actually talked about it back thanks to progrock.com Essentials. I was able to premiere some of the tracks from this back in the fall, late summer, early fall of 2023, and kind of be one of the first to announce this new album. So that was a huge honor. I also had a chat with Chester too. So if you want to watch that interview, make sure you click the link and check out that interview after this video, because today we're going to not just preview this album, but we're going to listen to some clips and we're going to review it. We're going to talk about this album front to back. We're going to talk about the artwork. We're going to talk about the sound, the production, the playing, the songwriting. I'll tell you this as my general feel for this album. This is someone who loves instrumental music. This is an instrumental record, a non-vocal record. As someone who loves new jazz, and I love fusion. I love world music, although that's an outdated term. There's so much I love that is in this record. So I'm naturally inclined to love this record, and I do love this record. I'm also inclined to love everything Phil Collins, hence the name of the channel, and Chester's right at the top of that list. Interviewing him last year was probably the highlight of my life, like one of the top, 25 moments of my life, speaking to Chester. It's surreal, even just thinking about it now. Same with my buddy Harry Kim. It's just surreal to be like, I watched that guy in Toronto in 90, the Serious Hits tour, and then many, many times after that. And now he's here in my office on Zoom, and we're chatting one-to-one. It's surreal. I had a poster of him and Harry and the band on my wall. Anyway, so I am biased. I'm going to rate this album with a huge bias for my huge love for Chester. What a sweet guy. I've heard so many nice things. I've never met him in person, but we did chat for an hour, and I've heard so many nice things about him. This record came to me courtesy of the record label who released this record and Chester's other band, Unitopia. And they sent me this copy. And if you stay tuned to the end, we're going to, I've already mentioned this, and we're going to do it in the next couple of days. And that is, we're going to do a draw. So if you want to win, there's 4 ways you can win. First of all, the biggest grand prize that you can win is only if you're part of our Patreon. You click the link to join our Patreon. You still have a day or two left. And you win a signed test pressing of this record on vinyl. 180 gram black vinyl, signed test pressing by the man himself. So that's just for our patrons. We have about 30 or so patrons. So they have like a very high chance of winning. We also have an autographed CD, which is courtesy of progrockessentials.com. That'll be open to everyone here. You just have to go to everythingphilcollins.com, enter your email for a chance to win. And then we have a black vinyl that we're giving away and a blue vinyl. So there's 4 chances to win to just the general public. If you just want to sign up and don't want to join the Patreon, then you have a chance to win the signed CD and then one of the 2 records. And then our patrons draw will happen. I'm going to be doing it right now, actually, not on this episode, but very soon. We have 9 songs on this record. I want to show you the credits too. I won't read them to you. I'll just show them. And one thing you might notice is Chester's son plays keyboards on here. And Chester's son, Keel, is very accomplished and has like a YouTube channel and does a lot of does session work and does live work as well. Just like his old man. Wake Up Call is the name of the album. No relation to the song from Testify, although when I first got a copy of this record back in the summer, it was the WAV files. It was from the label long before it released, and it was there was no track sequence yet. So I was just randomly listening to songs. So I have, at the time when I first announced the record, it wasn't in a position to do a review. I've now since listened to the record dozens of times on vinyl, on digital, and I now have like a pretty good feel for this record. I think one of the things that I dislike about this record is actually one of the things I respect the most about this record, and that it's not a drum-centric album. It is not just Chester banging on the drums. I was kind of expecting that, and I was excited about that, like maybe just drum grooves and, for days. But I can imagine like a lot of fans wouldn't necessarily love that. Or a lot of passive fans or fans of Phil Collins. However, I was kind of surprised that it wasn't more drum-centric. And I even talked about this in my initial preview, and I talked about it with Chester too, is that even the drums aren't forward in the mix. So it's not like you're listening to this music with great instrumentation, great melodies, and soloing, but you get a sense that the drummer's the most important person or the celebrity in this band, in the sense that the mix has the drums more prevalent, or that there's like long breaks with big drum solos. Even that would have been interesting. But no, it's just a record. It's just a record of songs, of music, of a great, super tight, beautiful band, incredibly talented musicians, great instrumentation, great instruments, great recordings as well. Just playing cool songs, really, really cool songs. Now, there are moments where Chester does some really, really cool stuff if you listen carefully. Also, the rhythm, even though they sound simple, they're super complex, and there's just some incredible hi-hat and snare work that's happening that's very, very Chester. And we know in my interview with Chester, he's a lover of simplicity, of, yes, complex, difficult, but I mean, really, he's locked in, and he just loves a good groove. He's not like Phil, really, where, there's just these big, massive tom fills and all these things happening. He just likes to really lock in. That's why his favorite Genesis song is Throwing It All Away, which I was so, impressed and surprised to hear. And this record is kind of like the jam out of Throwing It All Away. It's just a really, really nice groove. Some great guitar work, some great bass work, and some great synthesizer stuff. Now, if we go to track by track, I will say the first song, Wake Up Call, is my least favorite. There is some sort of weird synth tone, some sort of dissonant tone that's kind of meant to sound like an alarm clock. Like an alarm clock is was very unpleasant to listen to. That's why we wake up quickly to turn it off. There's this it's this kind of harsh sound between like a traditional 90s alarm clock and then maybe an alarm on your iPhone, and it's just this like weird sound. I really find it unpleasant to listen to. The track is pretty cool, but this whatever this like preset on the keyboard, or however they created this sound, maybe it was in post, I find it unpleasant. And I would say Wake Up Call is probably my least favorite song on the album. One of the interesting things about instrumental records is how they title songs. I mean, does it sound like a wake-up call? Does Sunrise, the song, track 2, sound like a sunrise? I think maybe to the artist it does, and maybe that's imposed on us as the listener a little bit. This might be a good time to talk about how this record was made. It was made similar in the COVID time. It got started in the COVID time, where I believe Chester would just record some grooves, and then he would send it off to his musician friends, and then they would write songs or arrangements, and then Chester would give feedback, and then they probably would cut some things up in Pro Tools or re-record parts. So it was basically started with the grooves and then built off from there. So it isn't improvised, it isn't a live band, but I would imagine that a lot of the melodies and the kind of song structure comes from what Chester presented. So this original beat, Wake Up Call, did that give the feeling of like starting your day and getting started. One of the things I think, just to speak to our Phil Collins audience, one of the things I think that Phil Collins fans might miss about a record like this, because we naturally try to compare it to Genesis or to Phil Collins' work, which of course isn't fair, but it's just the nature of us being Phil Collins fans and listening to all of the stuff around the Phil Collins universe, like Chester. This album kind of lacks mellow moments. Phil Collins is a mid-tempo kind of guy, whereas the opening of this album does remind me a little bit of Hanging Long Enough. You're not going to find any kind of laid-back, chilled stuff, with the exception of maybe the second track, Sunrise, and the last track, Reflection. I think Reflection is probably my favorite, and then there's a song called Joy, Joy, Joy is also my favorite. Just a beautiful track. I mean, it's kind of fun to talk about this album now because I listened to it so much last summer. And now it's the next summer, and it just kind of reminds me, to me, this is a summer album. So if you haven't checked it out yet, I don't think it's on streaming platforms. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can get it from Bandcamp. If you go to chesterthompson.bandcamp.com, you can get it as a digital record. You can also buy it on vinyl or CD. I think that it's important that we do pick up this record and we support Chester, because we want Chester to be making more music. I think at his age, for him to be releasing records, very much like Peter Gabriel, I think it's an amazing thing, and I'm all for it. I want more of it. I love seeing Anthony Phillips and Steve Hackett releasing records. So make sure you pick up this record and support this album, because it's supporting that universe that we love so much. And Chester is like one of the sweetest guys in the universe. Let's talk about the artwork. It's one of the criticisms I have with it. I'll tell you why. Because album covers are a big deal for me. I feel like, and I'm only being critical because this is well done. So I have no issue. I'm just talking about it from a subjective, artistic side of things. This is well done. It feels a little bit like on the nose because it's an alarm clock. And it feels a little bit like maybe this is just stock photography, which is fine. Like I use stock photography too. And this is really cool, really well done. That's a great artistic thing. That could have made a cool cover too. But there's, times like this. Here's what I'm thinking. If this is potentially Chester's last full-length album, I just know that it took like 3 or 4 years to make. So I don't know how many of those people are pumping out. It's difficult to do, to press to vinyl and everything. If this is his kind of like, big album that has been years in the making and something we've been waiting for, I feel like to see his face would have been cooler, to almost like, here's what I would, if I was the art director of this, no disrespect to the designer or Chester or the label, but I really want to put an emphasis on how iconic these people are. If Daryl were to do a record, I would want the same for him. But like a black and white photo of Chester, there's a press photo that goes with this that is really beautiful. But, just an honest, great picture of his smiling face, black and white. And then I'd honestly go the handwritten, as a kind of an homage to Phil, but to see Chester's handwriting on here with the wake up call and his name, maybe even a self-titled album. And same thing on the back, just a little bit more authenticity. I just don't think the stock photography does him justice. That's just my opinion. I feel like I love Chester. I love his work. So I would have loved to have seen something a little bit more, something where we can kind of look at this record and go, I want to look into his eyes. I want to look into his soul. And he even put a Bible verse. He's very religious. So he put a Bible verse on the back, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. So I just kind of feel like it would have been nice for it to almost be a little bit of a face value cover. Now, I'm not saying that he has to like follow in Phil's footsteps. And of course he wants to do his own thing. I respect that. But I just think that, there are examples of like Bob Dylan and Paul Simon and, times where people just use their face on the cover in a very honest way, like Adele as well. That's my only criticism. I feel like I would have had a little bit more of a personal connection with this record, just to be able to hold the vinyl and to see that guy. When I first started talking about this record, I played some clips and people were a little bit critical. Not everyone, but 1 or 2 people were a little critical about the sound, the genre being, I don't know, maybe compared to kind of like that old term of like muzak, like easy listening. Honestly, I see where they're coming from. The fact of the matter is, though, that music or this music is very difficult to write and to perform. The instrumentation of this is not like AI music. This is not something that you can just press a demo on a keyboard and create music. This is very well thought out, incredible time signatures. The production quality, the mix is stunning on this record. This is a record made by real musicians, real professional musicians. And the interesting thing is that this genre, there's artists like John Carroll Kirby, some modern Japanese artists who are actually making this type of sound because they love it as an homage to this this style of jazz that is really, really difficult to make. That was very popular in the 80s and 90s. I'm back. I think, I like records like this because to me, they're like dinner party music. They are records that I put on a Saturday afternoon. I like to listen to records like this when I have to work, when I have to write, sometimes when I read. I think like lyrics are a bit distracting, so I really appreciate a record like this. I hope that Chester does more. I wonder if there's more from these sessions, this remote session of him tracking. Did he track the drums actually? Now I'm kind of curious. There's really not too much engineering information, so I'm assuming that everybody kind of tracked their own instrument. So if he tracked the drums, that's pretty cool. So maybe we'll get more because he's playing he can do the recording at home by himself, and then his musical counterparts, maybe he'll get together with Brad or Daryl or Harry Kim and do another record. Anyway, I really like this. Make sure you pick it up. To enter our contest, if you want to win a chance, have a chance to win the signed test pressing, you have to join our Patreon. You can do that in the next 24 hours, and you'll be entered to win. Otherwise, everybody, including our patrons, just go to everythingphilcollins.com if you haven't already. Sign up, and the draw will be in the next little 1 or 2 days, and I will email the winner for the signed CD, the blue vinyl, and the black vinyl. So make sure you check out this record. It's a fantastic record. I just love this type of music, and I love Chester. So thanks for watching.